Why not try to take on some kind of responsibility, and a lot of it, so there is no time to think about the meaning of what is happening. Almost all adults find something for themselves because the alternative is to ignore the growing sense of uselessness year after year until it leads to a sad breakdown. In my case, this is for the most part rather a forced necessity. Due to the increasingly more complicated geopolitical situation and the widespread anxiety, I made a number of major financial mistakes that returned me to the foot of the mountain called prosperity. It's like a fire that deprived you of your home, only you cannot write off what happened to a divine vision. Bankruptcy, if you can call it that, first causes the brain to experience various degrees of despair, and then, at least in my case, it begins to gnash and panic about how to fix everything. Firstly, you need a roof over your head, and secondly, work. In the climate of, albeit not far but still the north, living in a car is not an option. And what can you buy with a couple of standard monthly salaries? That's right, abandoned shed far from urban infrastructure, but happily with a piece of fertile land. The warm season was just beginning to take over. Nature was waking up from its sleep. There was a whole summer ahead to prepare for the harsh winter. It was only necessary to forget for a while about the fantasy of becoming an artist, and make efforts of a more material nature. I'll start by cleaning my new domain. Everything that can come in handy in one pile. Garbage in another, closer to the gate. Tear off everything that dangles. Burn everything that is rotten. From the previous owner remained a decent amount of old welding electrodes, which, after a good drying, were quite useful for rough work. Well, in general, that's all. All that was valuable was pulled out by thieves long ago. Metal, utensils, clothes. Although in the ground remained about 20 meters of metal pipeline, cut off from the general net. Due to the fact that thieves hunt mainly in winter, I guess they didn't find them under the snow. But even if they found it, they would not be able to tear it out of the frozen ground. They will come in handy as fence posts. Fortunately, everything is in order with water here. At the border of the site I found a tap with water. The water here is pumped out of the ground when the average daily temperature is above freezing. Having easy access to water is a huge help in growing crops. I'm not saying that it's impossible without it, but it would be much more difficult. You would have to make proper rainwater drains from the roof, or carry water from somewhere else. It would never be enough. But the unpleasant aspect of this abundant soil is the ants. I sometimes even imagine that everything you walk on is one big anthill that has not been disturbed for many years. Well, I'll disturb them alright. I'm sorry, but you need to move somewhere else. There were rotten wood everywhere, rubbish, 5 years of uncut grass. I would leave old grass for compost, but there is just too much of it. Of course, there was no electricity in the house. It was cut off long ago because of debt. But we settled this matter, and soon I found an electrician who hooked me up to the mains and installed the fuse box. By the way, these devices on his feet, which allow climbing the poles, he called cats. I thought it was funny. The earth began to defrost, which meant that it was urgent to ruffle and fertilize the soil, and start planting various crops. With potatoes, onions, garlic and other greens, everything is easier. They grow beautifully in the open. But for cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers and eggplants, you need to make a greenhouse. They are more sensitive to temperature changes. By the time I started to make a large greenhouse, I had already made several small ones for testing. From an old sofa and other found materials, but at least one must be good. I was so captivated by this build that I even began to be late with planting. Seedlings for a greenhouse had to be bought from an old woman at the bus stops and markets, because they needed to be germinated a couple of months ago, which I naturally forgot about. And friends gave me potatoes for planting. I took several seedlings of fruit trees from the same old woman's, a plum and an apple. Who knows, maybe I'll live to see their first fruits. The sooner you plant, the more likely it is, right? Well, I also threw all kinds of greens. Parsley, lettuce, dill, radish, carrots, beets, spinach, and everything that came at hand. Everything grew very well. I would even say too well. There was another problem with the abundant soil, namely the uncontrolled growth of weeds that had to be dealt with, at least preventing them from blooming and continuing to disperse to freshly ruffled up areas of the soil. And since I'm now in austerity mode and can't afford a weed whacker, let's use the old way, scythe. The decision to work in this particular job was taken quite by an accident. I was asked to help in the summer season on the influx of visitors to one sanatorium. And the schedule was very convenient, 24-hour shift every 4 days. I had plenty of time to take care of my house and land. The job consisted of cleaning up the area and carrying all sorts of heavy things, such as bottles of water, bags of linen from the laundry, arranging tables for various specific events. Occasionally something needed to be fixed: doorknobs, faucets, rental bicycles. I like this job. It's like a story about the janitor at NASA who prides himself on helping send people to the moon. No one pulled me unnecessarily, no one frayed the nerves. And at night, kind of like acting as a security guard, for the most part my time was free. I often took welding machine with me to work and weld the various small metal parts for the stove, which we will soon reach. In the morning after the work, I like to go into the nearest forest and relax while picking mushrooms or blueberries. For fun and stretching up, I came up with boxing. But of course a boxing bag of the right size would be quite expensive. And sewing a bag yourself is very difficult and not much cheaper. So I made it easier. This design has shown itself pretty well, and I'm not afraid of breaking it or leaving it on the street. In the meantime, the earth was already beginning to bear its first fruits, so I could save money and be fed 90% of my own resources. Most of the harvest I preserved in jars and took them to a rented cellar for winter storage. Finally, it was time to take care of the house. First, as usual, it's dust and dirt. I really wanted to keep the original brick stove, but it was impossible. Besides missing a part of the pipe, which I could easily fix, the foundation with the whole structure, and there was no foundation as it turned out, was leaning worse than a Tower of Pisa, and all the internal channels were tightly packed with soot and broken bricks. Therefore, with a heavy heart, it was decided to change the stove to a less efficient but easier to maintain metal one. While inspecting the walls, I very fortunately discovered that at least one room was made of timber. The rest of the rooms were frame. I can work with timber. Wooden walls, even though 10 centimeters thick, already give me a good base for the winter shelter. I just need to create an airtight cocoon around it. Let's start with the window. One layer of glass, just one cutted. At work I found wide boards that no one needed, which will serve as a material for the window frame. I had to buy window itself, because even though I found many different windows in landfills, they all could not be opened. And I decided that the room would need to be ventilated, and the size was quite specific. Design of the frame was simple. I saw off the parts to size, cut out the locks along the edges, coat with sealant and fix everything together. Oh yes, I varnished the wood so that it does not absorb moisture and does not change size. Otherwise, the glass in such a frame may crack due to differences in hygroscopicity. Next is the roof. I had absolutely no faith in the former truss system. It was assembled almost from trash. Particularly disturbing was the practical realization of the weight of the old reinforced cement sheets, together with the future snow load right above my head. And in any case I had to raise the ceiling, so it was easier to redo everything. I raised the central beam a little and treated the surface to leave it visible inside the room, for aesthetic purposes. I have no money yet for facing the facade, so I closed the attic with a windproof cloth, just so that the snow does not get under the roof. Remember I told you about the details that I welded at work? Here is an example of a chimney damper. I showed how to do it in my other video. I welded the damper to two sections of the chimney, and after that to the iron stove of the simplest design. I received the stove itself from an old woman in gratitude for ruffling and fertilizing the garden for her. Even the heaviest lever can be moved by pushing the earth back and forth. Or what was Archimedes saying? To prevent anything from catching fire, the chimney must be passing a wooden ceiling through an insulating box filled with non-combustible material. In addition, I will make the attic section from a pipe of a special double design with insulation between layers. This will not only prevent combustion from, for example, dry leaves accidentally getting into the attic space, but it will also improve draft, eliminate the formation of condensate, and I like it more aesthetically. As a bonus to such a pipe, you can buy suitable ceiling colors. As insulation, I use mineral wool. For the ceiling, I will need layers overlapping each other at the joints, with a total thickness of at least 10 centimeters. I fill the insulating box with expanded clay. It is non-flammable and has good thermal insulation properties. Then I carefully fill all the cracks found during the examination of the walls with a mounting foam or felt. Indoors I create an airtight shell using foamed polyethylene with an aluminum coating that reflects 97% of infrared radiation. The weakest places in terms of insulation turn out to be the door and the floor. I insulated the door as best I could and added soft corners to the door frame to ensure tight contact. But I can't do anything with the floor. There's no money or time left. I guess I just have to wear full socks. Now, when all the basics are finished, I can take care of comfortability. For example, arrange sockets and fixtures in the right quantities in the right places. Arrange the necessary furniture, a portable wash basin, sofa, table. And of course, there is nothing more necessary than a workbench with vise. The stove I overlaid with bricks to ensure decent amount of thermal mass, which is going to be accumulating and slowly releasing the heat. And a couple of cast iron plates on top for the same reason. This will help keep the house warm, even when the stove is not burning. It remains only to prepare firewood. Choose dry dead trees. The denser the wood, the more energy it stores, but I no longer have time to choose. I take whatever I find. As a result, I found a bit of birch, for which I was looking for, but mostly cedar, aspen and pine. As you can see, it's been a pretty busy year. Now if the government suckers want to make a killer out of me, at least they'll have to work hard to find me. They will, of course, if they really want to. But maybe on my territory, the dog and I will be able to give at least some resistance before going to prison. And for everyone who watched to the end, a small bonus. As soon as you're born, they make you feel small by giving you no time instead of it all. Till the pain is so big you feel nothing at all. Working class hero is something to be. Working class hero is something to be. They hurt you at home and they hit you at school. They hate you if you're clever and they despise a fool. Till you're so fucking crazy you can't follow the rules. Working class hero is something to be. Working class hero is something to be. When they tortured and scared you for 20 odd years, then they expect you to pick a career. When you can't really function, you're so full of fear. Working class hero is something to be. Working class hero is something to be. Keep you doped with religion and sex and TV, and you think you're so clever and classless and free, but you're still fucking peasants as far as I can see. Working class hero is something to be. Working class hero is something to be. There's room at the top, they're telling you still. But first you must learn how to smile as a kill. If you want to be like the folks on the hill. Working class hero is something to be. Working class hero is something to be. If you want to be a hero, well, just follow me.